Porsche Club of America, Tech Tactics East 2025, just in case you forgot, that's where you are. And Porsche suspension design, or Porsche suspension geometry and elasto-kinematic toe change. Rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? Right? Yeah, just, if you master that and magneto-rheological fluid, you can impress all kinds of friends. The picture I chose for this is probably the most famous and most complex and most fussy suspension design we have with this feature. This is the rear axle of a 993, the multi-link suspension that has not one, not two, but 3 eccentric adjusters on it because we physically adjust a certain angle on here. And we have to have special tools to do it. Who was here a year ago when I did the bit about special tools? Well, one of the things I showed was those curved spirit level gauges that physically clip onto a pair of the lower control arms because the alignment computer cannot see the angle. We're literally measuring how parallel or not parallel these 2 arms are because of the way the geometry works. That's what I'd like to talk about today, is that geometry. And it's way easier to do if I'm not using a 993 because it's 5 links. I'm gonna dumb it down. Dumb down's a bad term. I'm going to simmer it down to a simpler, easier to digest Boxster and Cayman rear suspension. Same concepts. But first of all, let's talk about driving. Who here is a professional level race car driver? Sure, and mine too. I'm also great looking and hilarious, you know? Irresistible in my dreams. Who here is a club member who does go out and drives a lot, dedicated track car? Should have several hands up, good. Who here just likes to go to a DE event and get a feel for the car? Again, several hands up. How many of us in the room autocross, because that's the only version of motorsport we can afford? Yeah, no shame. It's still a lot of fun to get out there and really dive into the corners, load up the suspension, and feel the car. Without breaking laws, how many of us enjoy just a spirited drive in the countryside on a winding road, right? Great music on sunny day, top open, sunroof open, whatever, good therapy. So we talk about understeer, right? We talk about oversteer, and we talk about neutral. Understeer, all the car enthusiasts think of as boring, because we're car enthusiasts. But remember, we are the tiny fraction of the world. Most of the driving public cares way more about this than steering feel, right? You've seen them, you've dodged them on the highway. Understeer is inherently safe. If I'm gonna have a collision, and I never wanna have a collision, but if I'm gonna have a collision, what's the best part of the car to hit something immovable? The front. My seat belts, my airbags, my crumple zones are all designed to be effective in frontal impacts. It's boring to drive, but it's still better to hit the tree with the front bumper than anything else on the car. It's better to not hit the tree at all. Okay, oversteer is fun, right? Who here likes oversteer? When you can catch it. There's an entire sport dedicated to showing off how amazing your driving skills are. They even set up the cars to intentionally oversteer. But most of us, the general public especially, cannot catch it. And we end up looping the car. Who's ever spun a car off the track? You're never supposed to admit to that. Now, who here is actually going for lap times? This is key. Neutral, predictable, reliable, consistent lap times, right? You might have a teeny adjustment to the front or to the back, but consistent, reliable lap times are based on neutral handling cars. Am I correct? Okay, shake your head louder, I can't hear you. So, let's think about some more things. And I teach alignment class, and I tell the guys in alignment class all the time, don't just think about the angles sitting still on the alignment rack. What are the angles doing as you go down the road, as you go over a bump, as you go through a corner and lean to one side, as you step on the brakes and compress the front and stretch the rear, as you launch control and compress the rear and stretch the front. What's going on then? Well, first of all, let's just talk about static toe. When I'm looking at the vehicle from the top, if the front of my wheels are closer together than the back of my wheels, we call that toe positive or toe in. And all other things being equal, painting with a broad brush, that is stable. If I go down the interstate on the family road trip, set the cruise control, that's what you want, right? It's stable, it's smooth, it's comfortable. But it's not ideal for cornering. How many of you have a dedicated autocross car? I got one hand up in the back. Do you drive it or trailer it to the autocross? Okay. I've not had a dedicated autocross car myself, but I do know some people who do, who actually set up toe out front and back axle both, because when they're in the parking lot going around the corners, it is amazing. But if you drove the car across town like that, you better have a clean pair of pants when you get to the autocross, because it will be twitchy, it will be jerky, and it is great for changing direction, but it is terrible for stability. Is everybody with me so far? By the way, on a side note, if you hear my voice crack a little bit, I'm going through a cold and I don't know what, no kisses today, okay? But it is starting to affect my voice. That's why I'm hoping I make it all the way through today. No, it's, well, it might be. Okay, so toe in, great for stability. Toe out, great for changing directions. Now, why do we have variable valve timing and variable valve lift in engines? Is it to make extra horsepower? Or is it to make a smooth idling engine? We've always been able to make the fire-breathing monster. The problem is, slow down and go through a school zone. It complains, it doesn't want to idle. Variable valve time and variable valve lift is not giving you more on the top end, it's giving you a smoother idle, more drivability around town, and broadening the torque curve. It would be great then if we could develop a suspension and steering system that going straight down the road was toe in and going around a corner was toe out. Wouldn't that be nice? I could have the best of the autocross suspension setup and the best of the family cruiser suspension setup in one car. Well, that's what we're talking about today. What's bump steer? How many of you know what bump steer is by heart? You just know it. Well, some know it all, put a definition here. That's me. The unplanned toe change as a suspension compresses and rebounds. This is a byproduct of the steering geometry not working correctly with or as planned with the suspension geometry. What is it caused by? Well, it usually comes from either raising or lowering the vehicle outside of what it was intended to do. 22-year-old Rolf thought that was the coolest Volkswagen on earth. That's my 1962 Beetle. I built that when I apprenticed in a body shop. And it was low. There was no such thing as too low to me. I wanted it lower than that. I wanted to dig a rut in the asphalt and drop the nose into that, okay? How did it drive? Terribly. But I didn't know any better. I was 22 and 10 feet tall and bulletproof. But it was a cool car, but man, it drove awful. That car had terrible bump steer. So what's the difference between bump steer and kinematic toe change? Control? Geometry? Design. Who said design? There you go. It's the same thing. The difference is a team of engineers built kinematic toe in, and you accidentally install bump steer when you chop half the spring out. It's a byproduct of the same reasoning. It's all about the geometry. Is it on purpose or is it random? Okay. Now, I told you it'd be kind of like variable valve timing and lift. What we want to do when you go into a curve is for the front axle to, on the loaded up wheel, because in this case we're hard turn to the left, the right suspension is compressing. What we want to do is have the right front tire ever so slightly toe out. And I don't mean 5 degrees. I don't even mean 1 degree. I mean a tiny bit. Maybe it's a whole degree, maybe it's a half a degree. But it's a tiny bit of toe out. Toe out wants to do what? Change directions. What are we doing in the middle of a turn? Changing directions. The rear axle, we want to do the opposite effect. We want it to ever so slightly toe in. Why? What makes it stable? I'm not telling you you're wrong. I just want you to peel the onion. We don't want the same toe front and back. What we do want, though, specifically on this now loaded up rear wheel is we want that tire to bite and grip as hard as it will grip. Who knows what threshold braking is? Okay, your presentation talking about ABS. ABS is a great equalizer. I'm an idiot. I can stand on the stop pedal, let the computer threshold brake for me, but a really talented driver can feel threshold braking. The maximum grip is not full lockup. The maximum grip is not zero slip at all. It's 18, 20% is the hardest that tire will bite. Well, since we're going that direction, if I steer harder with this loaded rear wheel, it will cause that optimum amount of friction coefficient to build up between the tire tread and the pavement, and the back end bites harder. So we set up the front end to do a little bit of toe out to help change direction, and we set up the rear end to do a little bit of toe in to help it bite harder, and the result is we change directions beautifully without looping the car. Everybody with me so far? Great in theory. How do we do it? I'm glad you asked. What I have here is an image of a 981 or 982 chassis code rear suspension where the back bumper is farther away and we're standing sort of in the middle of the car. And it's a McPherson strut design. It is nowhere near as complex as the multi-link in the 993, the 996, the 997, the 991, the 992, the 9PA Cayenne, the 92A Cayenne, the 9YA Cayenne, the Taycan, the Panamera 970, the 971, the 976. Basically, we build this into everything that we make, just so you know, to one extent or another. But I chose this one because it's so simple. It's just McPherson struts, right? So think of it not in the pretty curved pieces of metal and some steel and some aluminum, just geometry. Who loves geometry in high school class? Good, thank you. Option number 1 for kinematic toe change. So we have elasto-kinematic and we have kinematic. Elasto meaning playing with the rubber bushings. Kinematic toe change. Notice we have the toe arm behind the axle center line, and it is, in relative terms, long. And we have the lateral lower control arm right in line with the axle center line, and it in relative terms, short. I'll back up one picture, and you can see what I'm talking about. There's my lower control arm. Yeah, there's a diagonal link, but I'm ignoring that. There's my toe arm. Those are the two that I care about. Now, the distance between where, and this is a little bit foreshortened diagram, so it's kind of, trust me, I'm not cheating. When the suspension compresses, we have steering going on. Which is stable, in or out? In. When I accelerate my back end squats, what would I like to have? I would like to have stability. I want to go toe in when I accelerate. When I stand on the brakes and my nose dives and my rear end stretches, what do I want? Stability. I want toe in. Hold that thought on toe out while braking because it's terrifying. Or as I go around the corner and my suspension compresses because I lean the car, it's still compressing the suspension. What am I going to end up with? And here's how it works. As the suspension compresses, these two red lines swing an arc through space. A large arc swings a long radius swings a lazy arc. A short radius swings a very sharp arc. So as we compress the suspension, notice the distance B got closer to the center of the car faster than distance A did. I'll back it up, and I'll go forward. The smaller radius draws a smaller circle. When my lower control arm ball joint moves in faster than my toe arm ball joint moves in, the result is the steering knuckle turns towards toe in. That's been that way since 1997 Boxster, and every mid-engine car we've made has had that suspension. Difference in hard parts, but same concepts. Yes, sir?
This suspension is compressing vertically or tipping back towards the rear of the car?
Great question. In this illustration, is this moving rearward or vertical? This is showing vertical motion, so that in this example, if the car body leans, we compress just one side. But also, if I accelerate hard, we would compress both sides. In both cases, we end up with toe in, and toe in is stable. Very good. The question is about, are we tipping the bottom of the wheel in or the front of the wheel in based on the vertical motion? Back up a couple slides. This is our two fixed points on the chassis subframe. This is my outer ball joint on my lower control arm, my outer ball joint on my toe link, and the only place it can move is to compress the McPherson strut up. As a result, when it moves up, they do both arc in. This one arcs in faster, and actually there would be a subtle change towards less negative camber. You are correct in that point of view, and I'll get to that in a second, but right now I'm just trying to show how the toe is affected. Because as we tell the technicians in alignment class, every single thing you do to a car affects every single angle and setting on the car. If you adjust toe on one corner, you've adjusted caster on the opposite corner. You can't avoid it. Some effects are large, some effects are tiny, but every adjustment does affect everything. Now, to the elastic part. I have here, these are not sports car bushings, but these are great examples of what we're talking about. This one is an asymmetrical bushing. This happens to be from an early Cayenne. It's not only hydro-filled, but it also has an asymmetric steel insert to limit the direction of motion that way and enhance the motion that way. You can pass it around the room. We also have one here that this is symmetrical left and right, or it's symmetrical vertically, but it's not a consistent all the way around. This one has an equal air gap left and right, but it's solid rubber up and down. Engineers are going to pick the different bushing to put the different place to enhance motion, to subdue motion, or only enhance it in one direction. I mean, who's ever heard or been guilty of saying, what you got to do is get rid of them rubber bushings because that just makes the car drive like crap? Who's ever heard that? Okay. Rubber bushings are there so that my dentist doesn't install my fillings 3 times a year because I don't want to shake them out of my head, do I? I have to have rubber bushings for a street car. Yes, rubber bushings will deflect, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing when we plan for it and make it to deflect the direction we want it to deflect. Who asked earlier, pulled me on the side about where do we hang the brake caliper and why? That's coming up, so stay tuned. So option number 2, what I have shown as a blue dot here, the lower control arm bushing, we purposely make soft. And the bushing that's here on the toe arm, we purposely make extra rigid. Now, G-force comes into play. Contact patch grips, you throw 3,000 pounds into a corner, there must be an equal and opposite reaction, right? How much weight are we shoving sideways on that contact patch? A lot. So when G-force pushes the lateral control arm sideways, and we cannot press the toe arm sideways, what happens? We get toe in. And toe in is stable. Everybody should be singing along now. We're going to have a, yeah, should have passed out hymn books, huh? So when we compress the suspension vertically, we move towards toe in. When we load the suspension laterally with G-forces, we move towards toe in on the back axle. That causes the tire contact patch to bite a little harder, and the back end stays planted firmly. So what's different this year is I have computer animation, kind of. This is a CAD file that Germany let us use, and I did a basic animation with it. It's not perfect, showing both compression and lateral load, and then we change viewpoint on it. This one's really clear. There's my vertical compression, and then there's my lateral load as well. Yes, we're at the back of the car looking forward. Now we're top of the car looking down. Toe in with vertical compression, more toe in with lateral load on that rubber bushing. And you're right, it does make it a tiny bit camber positive, or in the positive direction on the camber. You are correct. So that was something new I wanted you guys to see. This is not actual animation software. This is engineering software that we can do some baby animations with. It's not perfect, but it gets the point across pretty well. So, you may have noticed I have some red and green sticks on the front counter. I need 2 volunteers, please. Your chance for stardom. There we go.
Can I get the big stick?
Can you get the big stick? Only if you stand on that side, because you have to match the picture. Okay, so you are the steering knuckle, you are the McPherson strut, and we got to share. You're going to be the lower subframe. I purposely did this because it matches kind of here. This is a 1-to-1 model from a 981, 982 rear suspension. And the toe arm, it's not as drastic as it used to be on a 986 and 987. It is still longer than the lateral control arm, but it's only just a couple centimeters longer. It used to be significantly longer. So, you know, designs evolve. But this one is where the soft bushing is. This one is where the rigid bushing is. And you can tell because, leave it flat on the table. With them both flat on the table, they are parallel, yes? So just put your finger on top of both and raise yours vertically.
What?
Yeah, about there. Now, from your point of view looking across, it may not be drastic, but because these are 2 different lengths, they are no longer parallel. Can you see that there? I can't. Down and up. Because they're describing the 2 different arcs, we're causing this joint to move to my right, your left, at a more rapid rate than this joint. And that's the toe in on the wheel carrier. Everybody with me? Mm-hmm. Cool. Now, leave that finger there rigid. Gently push that 1 inch towards him. So if we have an elastic bushing here and we add a lateral load, we can see that we move towards toe in. This is, again, driver's side rear wheel. We're driving that way, harder on the right corner, compressing the left suspension. Everybody with me? Good. Back to normal. Now, we stomp on the brakes. Weight transfer goes forward. You can't go below the table, can you? But you can lift both of those and set them on top of your fists like this and hold them with your thumbs. Perfect. So now, we're no longer parallel again, right? But that's the shorter arc. We still move towards toe in during braking. Because toe in during braking is stable. Okay. Now, you can set it back down. You may have heard of something called lowering springs, because everybody knows, especially 22-year-old Rolf with that Beetle, everybody knows when your car is lower, it handles better. It has to. The internet said so. So if we take this stock ride height and keep one fist under here, lowering a car is essentially compressing the suspension, isn't it? I now no longer have parallel arms, I have too much toe in. So you take it to your buddy's alignment shop, and he puts it on the alignment rack, and he resets the toe to be correct. Static toe. Now you're driving down the road, and everything's fine. And when you compress it even further, you still get that toe-in effect, and that's great. But what happens, take your fist out, when you hit the brakes now, and you go back to what's effectively stock ride height with the toe eccentric turned towards toe out? We were talking about this at dinner last night. When the Cayman GT4 Club Sports first hit, every race team cranked down the ride height, and what happened under braking? The back end is all over the place, because once you get outside of the, every engineering process has a window of tolerance. You get outside that window of tolerance, and now instead of being toe in during braking, you're toe out during braking, and the car is all over the track and terrifying, and yeah, now you need to get a new race suit because you messed it. Everybody with me now? Okay. Toe in is stable, toe out wants to change directions, even when you don't want it to. It still wants to change directions. Thank you two gentlemen for helping. Round of applause for our two volunteers. So if you leave the suspension stock, you set up the static toe on the alignment rack, and you go down the highway, and you're fine. And you dive into a corner, and you are towed in on the back axle, and you are fine. And you launch control it, and you toe in the back axle, and you are fine. And you hit the brakes hard, and you extend the back axle, and you toe in, and you are fine, because toe in is stable. Now, tough question. How is the front suspension on a 9X1, or for that matter, 9X2, sports car like the rear suspension on the 981, 982 Boxster and Cayman family? How are they similar? They're struts, yep. They do have uneven links, yes. Who's been under one of those cars on a rack? Did you ever pay attention to the part numbers? Good. So the lower control arm part number on the rear of the Boxster and Cayman is the same part number as the lower control arm on the front of the 911 and Boxster and Cayman. How similar are they? They're very similar. In fact, you go back in the time machine, back to the late 90s, the original Boxster only had two part numbers for steering knuckles. The right front knuckle was the rear left knuckle, and vice versa. I mean, I could get all crazy and do a parking brake on the front axle like a Saab if I wanted to. It actually had provision for a parking brake up there. How is it different? So I'm attached to human hands. I can steer the car with what was a toe correction arm, is now the tie rod. Yes. Where is the tie rod? Who asked me about the part of the brake caliper placement on the steering knuckle earlier? Where is the brake caliper on the front axle of that 992? Is it in front of or behind? It is behind. Where is the brake caliper on the back axle? So, how are they different? It's the same design spun around 180 degrees. What's the result? toe out when you load it. There's that variable valve timing thing. Before we get to that, let's talk about Ackerman geometry a minute. Let's talk about Ackerman geometry for a minute. Who knows what Ackerman geometry is? Not enough of you are raising your hands. Now, maybe it's because I'm a car geek, but when I was 10 years old and my parents got my first big book about car technology, I'm flipping through the pages and I found Ackerman geometry and I went, that's cool stuff. So I've known about this since 10. Why haven't you? All right, so if I'm going to negotiate around a curve, all four wheels are going to draw a different arc. And you would think the guy named Ackerman invented this, but no, he just patented it first before the guy who invented it could patent it. So he gets the credit, right? Ackerman geometry says that if I build my steering geometry with a theoretical point in mind, if I draw a line from my steering knuckle through where my tie rod goes, here we go, this diagram, and extend that line, if it lands exactly in the rear axle center, and I build my two steering levers on that geometry, that's what we call 100% Ackerman, meaning correct, 100% true, lambda 1, all that, right? So that when I do steer, that angle of steering lever causes my inside front wheel to steer harder than my outside front wheel, and that is toe out, right? That's good. Here's the problem. If all I'm doing is building grandma's four-door beige mobile, that's what you want, because how fast is that car ever going to go around a curve? No, it's going to casually drive around town. It's going to smoothly pull into the parking space at the grocery store. Are you with me? It's perfect for that use scenario case. There's probably a good engineering term for that. It is designed with that end user in mind. But if you try to hurry that car down a road, if you try to take that car to the racetrack, it's now a fish out of water, isn't it? Because bushings load up and things move in motion and you no longer have the correct toe out. So what does Porsche do? Well, we learned about this way back in October of 2011. We were in Germany for our training on the launch of the 2012 model year 991, and the chassis instructor at the time told us the 991 chassis uses a 140% or a plus 40 Ackerman geometry. That means if you take the wheelbase length of the car and add 40% to it, that point where they come together, I've actually measured out in class with my technicians where we measured the distance of the wheelbase, and I have one guy with a calculator add 40% to it, and the Ackerman geometry point is behind the rear license plate on this car. That's not in the middle of the axle, is it? By about that much. Well, that means we have a less different or a closer to parallel steering now. Is that bad? Who here drives a 991 or 992? When you back out of a parking space and cut it to full lock, it goes ba-bump, 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 ba-bump. It's like, is this a 74 Bronco with the hub locked in? Why does it do this? It's because of this plus 40 Ackerman geometry. These two tires no longer have a common focal point, and it does not steer differently enough. They're too close to parallel, so they fight each other for traction at parking lot speeds. What do we know about that elasto-kinematic toe bushing in the front lower control arm? Because it's the same as the back lower control arm. When I put a lot of G-force into it, it squishes, and on the rear axle it causes toe in, on the front axle it causes toe out, and there's that variable toe I promised you. At high speed, it has the correct Ackerman geometry. If you have tire skip, you're just not driving fast enough. Quite literally, This car is designed for casual driving around town. This car is designed to go to the track. So take it to the track and make it happy. So here's a picture of it. And again, it's three-dimensional, it's foreshortened, but this is the same part number right here. So it has the same rubber bushing right here. And when we load it up, it will allow the lower control arm to compress. Meanwhile, the tie rod that's being held by the human being who's steering the car doesn't compress because it's even less. It's spherical ball joints at both ends. It's ball joint front suspension, right? And we get this lovely toe out while cornering. How about that? So, in an ideal world, while cornering a sports car at speed, we would love to take a static front toe and increase the toe difference angle, increase toe out on the front axle, take a static amount of toe and increase the toe in on the back axle, and the end result is your car is easier to drive at speed, and it builds your confidence, and that leads to better lap times on the track. And that's the end, so it's perfect for opening up to questions. Let's wait for the mic on this one.
It's a great presentation. I appreciate it. How does real axle steering play into all this? Because I think it makes things a little bit different.
So, how does rear axle steering play into it? So when we got rear axle steering on the 991s, that's also when we moved that toe link from being longer than the control arm and behind to shorter than the control arm and being in front. We get a very, very similar geometrical pull on the toe, but without the elasto part, because now the elasticity be working against us, not for us on the back axle. So 991 and 992 is a different setup. It doesn't use the elasto-kinematic, just the arcing and the geometry. Then when we add the active steering mechanism to it, we take a 1/2 or 3/4 degree toe change and make it a 1.5 or 2 or 2.5 or 3 degree toe change, and really, really cause that tire to bite hard at high speed. Also, at low speed, when you do pull into a parking spot, it's like a front end loader now when it steers opposite. And who here has rear wheel steering? When you pull into and out of a parking space, you feel the rear end move. It's very, very effective. So it takes all of this stuff and ups the game again.
So with all the different break-ins with a new car, a lot of times people will say the first 1,000 or 2,000 miles, adjust or realign the suspension. Is that true, false, or your thoughts on that?
I don't have my own thoughts on that, but I do know that when I go to teach an alignment class, our alignment computer for some cars, but not all cars, asks you how many miles are on the car. Because it has 2 different specs written into it, because bushings and springs do settle, some cars more than others. So I don't have one single clean answer for you, I'm sorry. But especially if you're going to do a dedicated motorsports car, but autocross, DE, or full-on track, there's no such thing as too many alignments. Yep. Okay.
Okay, 996, 997 series, is it my imagination when the motor mounts go away, does it have any effect on that, or is that all more solidly mounted to the cross member under the transmission?
When the motor mounts go away, tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, when it starts dribbling on the garage floor and I realize there's something wrong with it and I replace it and it's lost all its goodness.
Okay, so who knows what?
I thought I felt something after I did it. Either the seat of my pants or my brain is broken.
No, I believe you. Who knows what PADM is? Porsche Active Drivetrain Mounts. So in our constant quest to make a car have a very dual personality, it can be a fire-breathing monster on the track, and grandma can take it to bingo, right? Having active drivetrain mounts means I get to have this nice, soft, squishy, comfortable car when I want it to be, and a rock-hard track demon when I want it to be. Because the mass of the engine, I mean, where's the engine in 911? The mass of the engine drastically affects the way the car behaves. If the engine is penduluming inside the body structure, it can, especially think of like a slalom course, constant changing, that would be the tail wagging the dog. So if you went from completely worn out motor mounts to fresh motor mounts and it handles better, yes it does.
Not my imagination.
It's not your imagination.
My personal Rouge felt different.
On top of engine torque and engine loading, if you have launch control or just launch hard, worn out motor mounts will cause more drivetrain sag and more oscillating vibration, as well as this pendulum thing. So yeah, fresh motor mounts, I totally believe that it made the car drive noticeably better.
I have a question about frequency, or after how many miles should the alignment be checked? I have a 991.2, 32,000 miles. I don't track it, but I drive it spirited. Everything seems fine, but just to be one step ahead of normal wear and tear, how often should the alignment be checked? And is a Porsche dealership the only place to get this sort of thing done?
So two-part question. First one I'll address with how I address that question every time in alignment class. How often should I have my car aligned? As often as it needs an alignment. Some people go, every time you put on a set of tires, have your car aligned. Well, just because your tires wore out doesn't mean it needs an alignment. I mean, tires are supposed to wear out. And if I finish a set of tires and there's no cupping and there's no feathering, it just looks like a racing slick when I'm done with it, do I need an alignment? No. That means don't touch it, you'll just mess it up. It's already wearing as good as it's going to wear. But if I do have feathering, if I do have cupping, if I do have uneven wear, then yes, by all means do an alignment when you have those wear patterns that scream, look at me, you need to align me. So that's part one. Part two, who's qualified to align your Porsche? Of course I'm going to say take it to the dealer. But specifically, any car that has four-wheel stability management. What was our first car with that? 99 Carrera 4, and every new car that we've made since then, I would only take to a dealer or to a qualified independent repair facility that purchases our tester and subscribes to our software, because they need to reprogram your steering angle sensor after the alignment. Every alignment. Not every other alignment, not every 10th alignment, every single alignment you must reprogram the steering angle sensor. Because computers, as much news as AI gets, remember, computers are just very, very good at following directions very quickly. One of the directions they follow is check out the steering angle sensor to make this calculation to determine which of the four wheels to apply brakes to. Oops, got it wrong because I had a line input. Every alignment, 99 Carrera 4 and newer, 2000 every car and newer, steering angle sensors there, has to be reprogrammed with the factory PVIS tester after the alignment. Footnote to that, if you were here a year ago and I talked about those alignment spirit levels for a 993, I would never align a 993 without that tool. So if your alignment shop or your Porsche center doesn't have that tool, at least your Porsche center can rent that tool from our special tools department in Atlanta, but an independent repair facility cannot. I don't align a 993 without that tool. Theoretically, anything earlier than that, a competent alignment shop should be able to align. There you go.
Do you have to ask if the independent shops could have those tools?
Do I have to ask the independent shops? Well, I'm not asking them for you, so buyer beware. If you're purchasing an alignment from an independent shop and you don't know that they can do your alignment, then do you know if they can do your alignment? We used to have this one fuel systems instructor in Germany, and it was kind of a smart alecky comment, but he would say, it is only correct when it is correct. And he's right.
Question. So we've all seen Porsches where all the inside of the tire more.
Yep.
We think just how Porsches are, but it's sounding like if you're driving your car aggressively, you might actually get more even wear than just driving down the highway.
That's exactly what I tell people. So I worked at 2 stores. I worked in Charlotte, North Carolina. Central North Carolina has some hills. Mountains aren't that far away. I can also go to the beach if I want to. But there is changing landscape in that part of North Carolina. Then I moved to Houston, Texas, which is as flat as this table. Every road is stick straight and made out of very, very abrasive concrete to put up with the heat load of the sun. And I cannot tell you how many times working in the store, I would unbolt the wheel and go, oh, I should have had gloves on, because I just gave myself all kinds of tetanus wounds, thousands of steel spikes holding onto my fingers now. And you'd tell the customer, you need tires. Like, no, I don't. I got plenty of tread. No, 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 no. That's the outside of the tire that has never once touched the ground. It still has the little rubber nipples on it. The inside of the tire went through the rubber, through the carcass, is into the steel belts, and is about to pop, and they don't know it. Because all they've ever done, I mean, back axle of our cars typically run about 1.5 degrees of negative camber. If you never go around a corner, the tire never leans over and uses the whole tire. And yes, literally, drive your car harder. It will thank you by using the whole tire. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Rolf.